can burn. I'm keeping my lamp full, waiting on the bridegroom. Cause when the kingdom comes, say I wanna be ready.
Welcome back to Lamp Oil Stock, a channel where we look at different issues from an Israelite point of view. And we're going to continue on with our ongoing series, the Red Letter Bible series. What do you got for us today?
Today we have Matthew chapter 9, verses 14 through 17.
Okay.
14. Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, Why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not?
15.
And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber mourn, as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come, when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast.
16.
No man putteth a piece of new cloth unto an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse.
And 17.
Neither do men put new wine into old bottles.
Why are you laughing?
Because it says bottles.
We're going to talk about that.
Else, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm not even going to cut it out of the video.
Else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved.
Okay. Let me explain why, if you don't know, let me explain why this is so funny to us. So, we grew up in the church, of course, but we grew up a long time ago. And every time this verse had been read back in the day, it always used wineskins instead of bottles. Because if you had a glass bottle and you put old wine in it, nothing would happen.
Right.
All right. But it was always referred to as wineskins. And if you put old wine in, if you put new wine in old bottles, in old wineskins, it would mess up the wineskin and the bottles. It would rip apart and it would fall apart.
Right.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay. But now listen. Now check this out. It's hard to find where it uses the words wineskins anymore. But the New American Standard Bible, not a translation that I'm just saying is all great and whatever, but the New American Standard Bible from 1971 still has wineskins. And if you look it up on Bible Gateway and switch to the NASB, the New American Standard Bible, it has all those translations with wineskins.
Okay, because 17 makes no sense the way this has been translated. And, it's the King James Version, but the King James Version used to say wineskin, so I don't know how we got to bottles, but either way.
See, so do me a favor. Read 17 from that version. This is from the New American Standard Bible. Read number 17.
Nor do people put new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the wineskins burst, and the wine pours out, and the wineskins are ruined, but they put new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved.
See, it does. It makes far more sense for that particular line. Like I said, I'm not saying that this version of the Bible is the absolute best, but it does still use wineskins, at least in this part.
Right. All right. So what you got for me?
Okay. So let's, normally what we do, and I would like to continue, start at the top and just work our way through what Christ is talking about and what the story happens to be.
Okay.
All right. So in the very first line, line number 14, Matthew 9:14, it says, "Then came to him the disciples of John."
Right.
So we have to think about who's showing up here.
Okay.
Okay, so if we go back in the beginning of Matthew, right? We have John the Baptist, and he is baptizing people.
Right.
And Christ comes to him and asks to be baptized.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as you go through the rest of that story, Christ goes on with his ministry off in one direction, and John is baptizing here. And someone ends up asking him, asking John, it's like, okay, so Christ is over there, and you're baptizing here. What's going on? And John says, I don't know exactly where this part of the story is. I'd have to. I didn't see it. I know it's there. I think it's in Mark or something. He says, I have to decrease for Christ to increase.
Okay.
All right. Basically, what's going on is John is saying that this is Christ. I'm just the messenger beforehand.
Right. Right. And we know that John is eventually beheaded.
That's correct.
Okay.
So John sends his believers, the believers that he's baptized, he sends them to Christ.
Okay. He's the people who were following John are now going to follow Christ. Okay.
So now at this point, this is where they walk into the story. This is where some of them, I'm not saying all, but some of them walk into the story at this point.
Okay.
So they, being with John, have been fasting.
Right.
Just like the Pharisees. They've been fasting. But when they get there, they see that Christ and his disciples are not fasting.
Right.
So this particular part of the story is not accusatory. This is a matter of understanding.
Right.
Okay? They're like, we don't get it. Why are you not fasting?
Right.
Okay. And it's also, the Pharisees, they also fast. We're still, the Pharisees keep the fest, keep all the feasts and all the fasts of the Most High, just like John's disciples do.
Right.
Okay? So that's why they're asking the question. Okay, so as we keep coming down, let's go to 15. And Jesus says unto them, can the children of the bridegroom mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then they shall fast.
Right. Well, you got me confused because you said that John's disciples and the Pharisees kept all of the holy days,
right?
And of course all the fasts. Well, so did Christ. So, I mean, what is your difference in that?
No.
I mean, you make it seem like Christ didn't keep the holy days.
Okay, no. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're talking about here. And now you just threw me off, but that's not what we're talking about here. They are in their question, they are using they're saying that, well, there are different times when people fast.
Right.
This is, what is fasting? Let's look at fasting for just 1 second. Okay? Let's look at fasting. So let's look over at Psalms to talk about what fasting is.
Okay.
All right. So if you don't mind, can you read Psalms 35 and 13?
But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned into mine own bosom.
Okay. So if we use this one, and I've got another verse we're going to look at too, but so I humbled my soul with fasting.
Right.
So to humble thyself, you one of the ways to do that is through fasting. Okay. Let's look at another one. Let's look at Ezra 8 and 21.
Okay. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river of AHAYA, that we might afflict ourselves before our God, to seek of him a right way for us, and for our little ones, and for all our substance.
Okay, so another, you're humbling yourself when you fast, and you also fast to get the Most High to tell you the right thing to do.
Okay.
All right, now
to strengthen our spirit.
To strengthen our spirit, to get us to get us on the right path.
Right.
Okay, so Christ is with you.
Right.
Physically standing right there. And as he says, what's the point of fasting? You can literally ask him, Christ, what should we be doing?
Right.
What's happening? He is literally, at that moment, he is standing there. You can ask. Now, you have to remember, we're not just talking about Christ here. We're also talking about the Spirit of the Most High is walking literally with him.
Right.
So, to prove that, let's look at Matthew 3:15 through 17. Can you read this verse for me?
Okay. And Jesus answering said unto him.
Oh, wait a minute. Time out. This is Christ getting ready to be baptized.
Okay.
Okay, go right in.
And Jesus answering said unto him, Suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he suffered him. And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water, and lo, the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting upon him. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased.
Okay, so let's go with this. So the Spirit of God descended upon Christ.
Right.
Christ is standing there in the midst of his disciples, right?
Right.
And you fast to humble yourself and to seek guidance.
Right.
Guidance is standing there with you.
Right.
So as he says, can the children of the bridegroom, he being the bridegroom, mourn as long as the bride is with them?
Okay.
Do you have to do anything extra to get guidance when he's standing right there?
Okay. Okay.
Do you see the point I'm
I
making?
see what you're saying.
All right.
I see what you're saying.
But there will be a day in the future, as he says, days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
So when there will be a time when Christ is not standing right there, and then they shall fast.
Okay. All right. I got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, let's do this next part. Let's look at the next part.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I need you to do me a favor.
Uh-oh.
No, trust me, it'll be good. I need you to read 16 and 17. Now, we're still in Matthew 9, 16 and 17. This is the second half of what we're looking at today. So just read both of those together for me.
No man putteth a piece of new cloth unto an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. You know, I can read this off my own computer.
You can.
17. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved.
Okay. Now, the reason I had you read that, all right, the reason I had you read that is, as I do, I try to look up the phrasing.
Okay.
You know, to me, I understand the illusion. You know, and I think that's talked about quite a bit. New bottles, old wine, new bottles, old wine. I think these illusions, the idea, is talked about on a lot. But why those words? Why that particular phrasing?
Well, I don't know, sir.
I know. I think I got it.
Okay.
I think I got it. So we're going to go back to Joshua, right? This is Joshua 9, 3 through 6. Okay? Now, let me set the story. So Joshua is leading Israel into taking the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
They've just taken Jericho. Okay, so you remember the Battle of Jericho?
Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho.
Yeah, that just happened.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the next event, the next thing that happens. Can you read Joshua 9, 3 through 6?
And when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done unto Jericho and to...
AHAYA.
Thank you, I couldn't read that. They did work... Oh, I gotta get up. Hold on.
Got to get closer to see it, huh?
They did work willingly.
Wildly.
Wow, that's not wildly. Willingly.
Willingly. Okay.
Whatever. And went and made as if they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks unto their asses, and wine bottles old, and rent, and bound up, and old shoes, and clouded upon their feet, and old garments upon them, and all the bread of their provisions was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua unto the camp at Gilgal, and said unto him and to the men of Israel, We be come from a far country. Now therefore make ye a league with us.
Okay, so now get this. So, what these people have done, these people are not Israelites.
Right. And they don't want to be killed, so they are tricking and deceiving.
They are, right. They are trying to trick the children of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they grab a bunch of old bottles, old clothing, and then they say, well, we're from really, really far away. So let's make a deal. You won't kill us because you're really, really far. We're not even in your territory. You ain't got to worry about us. They're being tricky. Right. So do me one more favor.
Okay.
Joshua 9, Joshua 9, 12 through 16. Okay. This is a little bit further down. As we said, they're trying to trick the children of Israel. So let's read what happens with their trick.
This our bread we took hot for our provisions out of our houses on the day we came forth to go unto you. But now, behold, it is dry, and it is moldy. And these bottles of wine which were filled were new, and behold, they be rent. And these our garments and our shoes are become old by reason of the very long journey. And the men took of their victuals, and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord. So they didn't fast. And Joshua made peace with them, and made a league with them to let them live. And the princes of the congregation sware unto them. And it came to pass at the end of 3 days, after they had made a league with them, that they heard that they were their neighbors, and that they dwelt among them.
Okay, so these people who have now played a trick, they have scammed the children of Israel into protecting themselves so they won't be attacked down the road. So if we go back over to Matthew, I think this might be why Matthew uses these particular allusions. While Christ uses these particular words to explain this concept. No man putteth a piece of new cloth unto an old garment. See, so as we think about this here, because it will shrink, the garment, the new cloth would shrink and make it worse.
Right.
Neither do men put new wine or a new agreement with old bottles.
Right.
Okay? See, I think this is an allusion to people who are lying about what they actually believe.
I get you. You're right, because it does go back to that, to Joshua really well, and I'd forgotten about that story. But, they did all that stuff in order to deceive the Israelites into believing that something was that wasn't. And of course, we know that the Israelites had to stick with their agreement with these people and spare their lives. But so I agree with you. That's
And see, I think it's funny. I think it's also strange, whatever, on why Christ picked to put this here. See, so it starts off with, and then came to him disciples of John. Mm-hmm. So these are people who have been baptized, and they were following John.
Right.
And they asked this question about fasting, which is answered in the next question. Mm-hmm. And then Christ goes on to talk about new garments and being renewed.
Right.
That to me is a little strange that he puts it right there. Is he, if this allusion to Joshua coming up, is he saying that some of these people may have just said that they were Israelites? Said that they were renewed and maybe went through being baptized, but hadn't really changed? I don't know. When I read it, this is just something else I get out of it. I know that most of the time when this is spoken about, it's about people will talk about it with baptism. You know, so you get baptized and you really need to change who you are, you know, to really become a believer.
Right.
So I know that it applies to us that way. I got that. But I also see, you know, there are people that say that they that have been baptized, that say that they changed, but they didn't change at all.
Right.
And I think that is part of what he's talking about here.
Okay, so I'd like to start with verse 16 and 17 when I give my take on these verses.
Well, go right ahead. I'm
So 16 and 17, as you were just saying, is comes to, are people really changed? Are they really doing this thing or doing this, or are they still doing something else and they're deceiving people? Well, I think in a way, when you look at verses 16 and 17, these are, if we take it to today, I was listening to a person who does news, right? And she claims to be an Israelite.
Right.
But every time I listen to her, I get so upset because of the things that she's saying. It's like, wait a minute, ma'am. You say you're an Israelite, right? But you'll talk about astrology shit and not have an issue with that. Or you'll talk about other Israelites who may be like Mexican or something like that, or you know, not American blacks, and you'll be down on them and you'll talk about them in this negative light, and yet you claim to be an Israelite. And the problem is with her and a lot of people is that you come into this truth, but you have lived a whole life of being evil. And most people who come into this truth came into the truth from some sort of religious belief, right?
Yeah.
And these are things that have been with them their whole lives, so they add to their knowledge when it comes to reading the Bible and their understanding, but they don't get rid of a lot of that knowledge and understanding that they had in the beginning.
Oh, I got you. So you're saying they don't change, they just pick up.
Right. So if they, believed in astrology, or they followed astrology, while they were living this life of sin, they don't get rid of all of the terminology and the things that go with astrology when they're talking about stuff that, in their opinion, doesn't directly relate to the Bible. They believe that they are still themselves. They've just added something to it.
You mean like they just put on a new name tag? They didn't take off the old one. It said, "This is my name, and I am I'm a Leo, I'm a this, and then someone explained to them, "Oh, look, you're an Israelite." And they, instead of taking off those old name tags, they just stick another one on there.
Right. It's like, if you look at school, from as far back as I can remember, I was told that the earth was round. Now, this is not something that I learned for myself and believed. It was something that was told to me from as far back as I remember. So when looking at the Bible, that's not something that you would think about. Is the earth round or is it not round? And so when you come into the truth, it's sometimes hard to go back and take away or throw out all of that junk you just believe that you know as a fact and a truth. Just like, is the earth round, right? I'm not saying it's round or it's not round. I think it's flat, but I think it's flat now. I didn't always think it's flat. And if you think it's round, that's fine. I don't care. But it is, we have these thoughts of ourselves that we believe to be true, or these facts that we know that we don't ever question. And so have everything from my past, the way I live my life, have I thrown all of that out in order to bring in the new wine? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I've thrown everything out. As I come across stuff in the Bible, I test what I find in the Bible to what I believe. And if it's different, then I throw it out. But that's why you need to constantly be reading for yourself so that you can come across these little things, because it truly is the mind. What you think or what you believe dictates how you act. So a lot of people have issues where they are just adding on some of the things from the Israelite belief and yet living their life the same old dirty, old, evil way that they were. And that makes it easier for them, right? I can still hang out with the people I used to hang out with because, yeah, I'm an Israelite, but, going to the club and getting drunk don't have nothing to do with being an Israelite, right? Because the Bible says you can drink Christ drunk wine. So we have to change everything about us, not just some things.
So what you're saying, and I agree with you, what you're saying is the whole point, part of the point of being in it, I say part of it, but the whole point of being an Israelite is taking everything that you know, right, and saying, okay, I'm letting all that go, and I'm going to read the Bible, and I'm going to fill myself up with his thoughts, how he sees these things. And if I read something and it disagrees with something that I already know,
right,
I should just dump it, let that go, and stick with what he's talking about.
Right.
And now, I know I was just restating that, but
right.
I'm going to say this. That is so hard. It is so hard. Because,
and the reason why we fight with our kids a lot is because they believe they know stuff because the world is telling them stuff. And so it's very difficult to say, no, I'm going to have faith that what God says is true and what I believe I know from seeing, hearing, or whatever is a lie.
Now, I want to bring up something. You just said something about our kids. And so I gotta add something into it. For those of you who have kids, you might be in a similar situation that we might be in, that we go through. And I do want to bring this up. Kids imitate their parents. They see their parents over time and they imitate them. And we didn't start in the truth before we had kids.
Unfortunately.
Right. So we came into the truth while we had kids. So they saw us beforehand and things that we were doing, they saw. And as we have changed our understanding and grown in the truth, they're stuck in the middle because they remember things from before.
Right.
And then see how we act now. And, of course, the world is pushing them to what we used to do and how we used to have been. And, now we're fighting against that, and it puts them in a very awkward position.
Right. And it's hard for a lot of people to admit they are wrong. I know one of the biggest things when dealing with my kids or family members, they'll say, well, you used to do this. And I'm like, yeah, I was evil. I was wrong. I don't do that anymore. And that kind of shocks people and gets them to shut up, because that's something that people are unwilling to do, is admit that at some point they were wrong about something. But as an Israelite, you have to humble yourself and admit, hey, I did bad stuff. I was wrong. Now I'm changing. I'm not that anymore.
And I want to bring up one more thing. The Bible, as I read it, it's not a handbook for how to raise children.
Right.
Because as I read it, and maybe this is just my own way of looking at it, but as I read it, it speaks to me, to me as the individual a lot, but it doesn't really say, okay, you as the father figure, here's exactly what you need to do. And because it doesn't do that, it doesn't lay out exactly what you need to do. You're trying to interpret it and use it as effectively as you can, and you can make a lot of mistakes, and unfortunately, when raising children, when you make those mistakes, they really can come back to haunt you,
Right.
and it's difficult. And it does talk about now this is something the Bible does bring up on a regular basis, is how children will fall away. Their parents will be doing these things, thinking they're doing the very best they can, and then the next generation didn't know him. Is what it'll say. And then the next generation didn't know, and then the next generation, and it's very difficult. So as a parent, speaking to other parents, you just have to hang in there and do the very best you can,
Yeah, but it's
trying
not,
to make it work.
it's not really important that the Bible give you an outline on how to raise your children, because what you need to know is how to raise yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because your children learn not from what you say, but from what you do. So if you live your life righteously, your children will live their lives righteously. The problem with us is, like you said, when we came into this truth, we already had our children. So we lived our lives very unrighteously at the beginning, and now we're trying to throw away the old stuff out of our lives, and also get our children to throw it away from theirs.
Right. Now, I do want to say this too. I'm very proud of my kids. I get reports. We get reports that they do great stuff, and I'm really proud of our kids. But we are our own worst judge. You look at your kids and you look at where you are, and you're like, man, I want my kids to be further ahead.
Right.
Further ahead than I am, and it's really difficult with raising children. And sorry, I'm not going to stick on that point anymore. Going back to this original point.
Okay.
Going back to this original point, with the bottles and new garments and those type of things. This particular verse, this group of verses right here, it just brings up so many things. They are talking about fasting in the beginning, and I know we didn't spend a whole lot of time on it.
Oh, okay. So, you need to be quiet, because I said I was going to do 16 and
Okay,
17
I'm sorry.
first.
I'm sorry. You go on.
Now we're going to jump to 15. So let me read it again. And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber mourn, as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast. So if we look at that verse and we skip over to, or back to Isaiah.
Yep. That's your favorite. This is your favorite book.
Isaiah, you think so?
You spend a lot of time in Isaiah.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do. So if we go to Isaiah 22, it's it starts off Isaiah 22 verse 1. The burden of the valley of vision. What aileth thee now that thou art wholly gone up to the housetops? So we're talking about a vision that is given here. And the vision is it kind of goes back and forth. It tells you this overall thing, and then it tells you something else, and then it goes back, goes back and forth. Like visions do, they can be kind of confusing. But if you read Isaiah 22, you will see that Israel is having a lot of trouble.
Okay.
And that it is pretty much destroyed, and that the Most High is going to send people to conquer us and to take us over, and we're going to be killed and all of this stuff. And then it tells us that the Most High is going to set someone up that um, he's going to set someone up that is going to come in and make everything great for
Okay.
the house of Israel for a little while, right? And that person is going to have is going to be glorious. I'm sorry. If we go to Isaiah 22 and verse 20, it says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will call my servant Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with thy robe and strengthen him with thy girdle, and I will commit thy government into his hand, and he shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. And the key of the house of David will I lay upon his shoulders, so he shall open and none shall shut, and he shall shut and none shall open. And I will fasten him as a nail in a sure place, and he shall be for a glorious throne to his father's house. And they shall hang upon him all the glory of his father's house, the offspring and the issue, all vessels of small quantity, from the vessels of cups, even to all the vessels of flagons. In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, shall the nail that is fastened in the sure place be removed, and be cut down, and fall, and the burden that was upon it shall be cut off, for the Lord has spoken it." So this is a vision of, or a prophecy that's going to come true.
Okay.
And in this vision, Israel is gone away, and they have forgotten their ancestors and the things that they had done.
Okay.
And they're falling apart, and the Most High is upset about all of this stuff. And he's weeping and he's crying. And so he says he's going to bring all of this destruction and all of this death on us. But before that happens, before he completely destroys us, he's going to set someone up that is going to be glorious.
Okay.
And that whatever he says will happen.
Got it.
Whatever he wants done is going to happen. But he's only going to set that up for a little while. And after that person is gone, or after he removes that person, then the destruction is coming.
Okay. Okay.
So, one of the things that I think is important when we read this, because this is a prophecy about Christ, right?
Okay.
So there's no need to mourn while everything is great. There's no need to fast, right? We fast when we're mourning, or we're trying to get an answer. Well, that answer is here. There's no need to mourn or to fast when everything is great.
Oh.
But when that greatness leaves, then there's plenty of time for mourning and for fasting and for whatever.
So
Now,
what you're saying is I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, that just got me. So what you're saying is Christ is making an allusion to this reference in Isaiah.
right.
Oh man, go on.
So if we look at Isaiah 22 verse 4, and I want to read it. It says, "Therefore said I, look away from me. I will weep bitterly. Labor not to comfort me, because of the spoiling of the daughter of my people." So all of this bad stuff and this destruction is happening because of the spoiling of the daughter of my people. Now, in our last video, I talked about how come the daughters haven't been made whole? How come they haven't been put to peace? How come all of this bad stuff is still happening to them? Why hasn't it been fixed? So here again, we're going back to the daughters, right? The daughters seem to be something that's overlooked. You have all of these people, all of these groups talking about we got to raise the men up while putting down the daughters. But God weeps for the daughters of his people. So again, it is about not taking that stuff that you thought you knew, those truths that you thought were there, and bringing them into the truth of being an Israelite. We have to get rid of all of that old crap and start again. Renew ourselves again. If the daughters have fallen, then so does the house, the children. Everything falls with the daughters. So in order to bring this stuff back together, we got to raise up our daughters, not above their stature, but to the place they should be. If you don't like the way our daughters are doing, if you don't like the way they look, the way they dress, if that is improper, then why is it that you stare at them? Why is it that you say that, they make you, they are trying to get your lust up because they look that way? If you hate what is evil, how can that be attractive to you? You say they shouldn't do it, but you lust after them. So you're teaching the people to lust, not to hate that which is evil. So you have to live what you preach. And you have to get rid of all of the old and bring in the understanding of the Most High and what it is He wants, not what you want.
Okay, so I'm just listening to what you say. I want to ask a question here from your point of view. It seems like Isaiah and Christ are making a connection that the daughters of Zion are a sign to the health of the nation.
Right.
That was my whole point.
Okay, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like,
and the destruction that is soon coming.
It's a sign. I mean, by looking at the way the daughters are treated and how they present themselves,
right,
it shows the health of the nation itself.
Right. Because you remember, there used to be a time when people treated women with a whole bunch of respect because they were the mothers. You didn't kill women. You held open doors. You did these things because of what their role was in society. Now that is just, I can't say it's flipped. It's just turned and it's twisted and it's evil. You got women who feel like you should bow down to them like they're gods, and then on the other hand, you have men who feel like women are less than the dirt on the bottom of their shoe. Nothing is right about the way this world is working today, and yet people seem to grasp at one or the other instead of realizing that both of them are wrong and they both need to be thrown out.
Okay. I got one more thing I wanted to bring up because you related a point that I just missed while we were talking about it. This prophecy about the bridegroom.
Right.
And while we were talking, I was trying to type it, but I looked up the word bridegroom, and for whatever reason I skipped it, but I wanted to go back and look it up. Can you read a verse for me real quick? Just one I hadn't really thought about.
Okay.
But this is Psalms 19, 4 through 7.
Okay, I can read a verse for you. Which one?
No.
That was more than one.
It's 3 verses.
4.
No, it's 4 through 7. It's 3 verses. Okay, 4 verses. Can you read these 4 verses for me, real quick?
Okay. Psalms 19:4. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple.
Now, so this is the first time the word bridegroom happens to be used.
Uh-huh.
And it's used, the word bridegroom is used about 8 times in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Different prophets use it throughout. Now, Psalms is where it starts off at, but it's used in Isaiah, which you brought up. It's used in Jeremiah and in Joel.
Okay.
Right? And this verse that we happen to be talking about today, in Matthew,
9.
In Matthew 9, is the first time Christ uses it.
Okay.
You know, and this is the time where Christ is explaining that he is the bridegroom.
Mm-hmm.
All those other verses are predictive about the bridegroom coming, and now in this one he says, can they mourn?
Yeah.
Well, I, the bridegroom. This is where he's beginning to fulfill the prophecy.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I
mean,
see
he's
what you're saying.
setting up the point that he is fulfilling the prophecy of, I'm going to call it the prophecy of the bridegroom, even though I don't know what other people call it. But, you know, this setup of the bridegroom, which is set up in Psalms and expounded upon by the prophets, this is where Christ begins to actually fulfill it.
Okay. So, I guess in conclusion, this is also another way that Christ is telling you that he was sent by the Most High to show you what it is that you need to be doing, to give you an understanding. And he's also telling us that it doesn't, the people who were teaching us, they have not just the belief in the law, but they also have these other beliefs that go outside of the Most High, and they're incorporating them. They're bringing those two things together, and they can't sit side by side. You can't be part Christian and Israelite. You can't be part Muslim and Israelite. Yes, we both use the same Bible, or all of us use the same Bible, or at least part of the same Bible. But what we need to be using is the Holy Spirit and the Most High. What we need to be doing is saying, I don't care what I knew or what I was taught or what I believed. All I care is what the Most High is trying to show me. And in this case, when we're talking about Christ, Christ is the light that is showing you what the Most High wants.
This is a good one. This 4 verses that have taken us all over the Bible. We traveled all over the place with this particular one. I think this is really good stuff. You know, to be honest, when I read over these 4 verses just to begin with, you know, sure, there's this one thought going on, but okay, we're talking about fasting, and now we're talking about wine skins and bottles and shoes, and you know, but it actually, as you go back and you look it up, it just relates to so many different things.
Right.
You know, so guys, thank you all so very much for taking the time out to go over this particular verses here in the Bible. Hopefully, you were able to get something out of it as you listen to us, you know, talk about it, tear it apart, and hopefully it inspires you to go back through and look at your Bible. There's all kinds of verses out there that happen to be related to this one, and I think that is the real power of the Bible, that it's not just the surface level. It is the things that you get as you do research and you look back and you see how this particular verse is related to this verse, which is related to a psalm, which is related to a prophecy, which is related to, you know, all these different things, as it all comes together, and then it goes back and you get to look at your own life through that kind of lens.
Because it's not important, or it's not important to read these verses if you don't apply it to the way you are living your life today, because it's meaningless without applying it to your life, and changing what you're doing, or being strengthened by what you're doing. It has, this is how you were supposed to live. It is important for you. It's not important for anybody else. It is important for you because you are light.
Absolutely. Guys, once again, thank you all so very much for taking the time out today. Hopefully, like I said, you've gotten something out of this, or you're inspired to read it for yourself. Do you have anything else?
Kwame Sharala.
Bye.
You can feel